I'm Saumya Choudhury, and we're going to cover some essential tips on marketing, sales, and how to grow your business. Today we have a very special guest with us, Elaine Doyle, who is a marketing expert, and she's had a decade-long experience working at Google and YouTube. We're so excited to have you here with us, Elaine.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
Okay, let's get started. So, Elaine, how has your journey been, and can you tell us how you got passionate about marketing?
Absolutely. So, I went through the same thing everybody does when they're starting out, wondering, what am I going to be when I grow up? I was convinced at one point that I should be a nun, a sister. Then I thought, no, actually, that means I can't go to as many parties as I'd like, maybe. And so I thought about becoming a therapist, because I love the idea of connecting with people and helping people, become their best selves and working out all of those particular problems. In tandem with that, then, I suppose, I had a lot of interest in creative. So, you've created a beautiful space for creativity here. I would have read Disney and, Enid Blyton and all of that stuff, and really fell in love with storytelling. And I think when I went to high school in Ireland, I discovered business. And actually, there was a lot of storytelling in business. There was a lot of creativity in business. And there was a little bit of gamification, but there's actually loads of creativity in marketing, loads of storytelling in marketing. And I think I had something of a conversion experience when I was studying marketing, and I met a company who had, this amazing brand, but they were selling kind of premium food, but it looked like on their website and on everything else, like they sold coffee. Like there was just this big mismatch between both of those things. And I worked with them to really build their brand and really develop this whole personality and persona around the brand. And I saw in real time real people respond to that, put their money up for this. They're connecting to it. They saw the value in it. They wanted it. It served a purpose in their lives. And I honestly felt super moved by that. And also, these are businesses that have been acquired on the basis of the stories that they tell. Some of these businesses that I've worked with, they outsource their infrastructure. They don't have factories. There's third parties doing everything. And so really, when they're acquired, the thing that people are acquiring is the brand and the distribution network that's created because of the strength of that brand. And I think that seeing the real commercial impact, seeing the numbers on a paper becomes really addictive. But more than that, I think if you are, if you're even somewhere and you have a table set up and you're sampling your product, and people come up to you and they love it and they interact with it and they engage with it, there is something just so incredible about that. And I have been chasing that high ever since.
Wonderful. I mean, it's just such a wonderful journey, because you've always been interested in creativity, and then realizing the scope of creativity that business brings is it really has an economic and real value to it. Business changes people's lives. So
absolutely.
So absolutely, I can totally relate to that.
It does.
Elaine, I'd like to ask you a very basic question. What is personal branding, and why is it central to marketing?
So personal branding is essentially all about marketing a person as a brand. So you're Saumya Choudhury. How do you show up? When you're on social, when you're here now, who are you? Are you the kind of person that I could see myself subscribing to? And I mean that in a real online and offline way. Do I want what you have? And I do, by the way. I love this place and everything that you're doing. So the reason I think that it's become really central to marketing now more than ever is because technology has really enabled people to connect with a lot of creators and influencers. And essentially what you're seeing there is somebody living and breathing a brand. If I think back to more traditional marketing, it would be people developing brands around the idea of this will resonate with a certain kind of person who values this, and you're kind of building that story. Whereas now, from a personal branding point of view, you get to live that story, and people get to say, oh, well, she likes that, I identify with her, so maybe I will also like that, or I want to hear what they have to say. The reason personal branding is really interesting for entrepreneurs is it actually really helps you think about your audience, who they are, what they might subscribe to. When you're thinking about marketing from a traditional point of view, you would have always thought about, like, who is my end consumer? What do they care about? Beyond sort of demographics like age, but actually, who are they? What do they value? What do they talk about? What matters to them in the world? Now, understanding that means you get to tap into that side of yourself a little bit more. And the more you can do that authentically, the more powerful a brand that you can build.
Absolutely. I can completely agree to that, and I think that's the value that personal branding brings now, more than ever, to bring your own personality to a brand and to carry forward the message and add value to people's lives. I think that's what business is all about. Elaine, I wanted to ask you, in terms of branding, like, can you give an example of how personal branding has been used, whether in your own professional career or in general terms, how it has been used in order to leverage a brand's value commercially?
So I suppose traditionally you would have had brands like Ben & Jerry's, for example, where they're talking about their kind of political view of the world or their world view. Then more recently, you'll have the likes of Logan Paul and KSI with their Prime drink, and they've had subscribers for years who really know them, and suddenly they're buying this drink. I think that the commercial value of it really lies in people finding that connection. And often the value is in the connection. It's actually in the kind of you resonating with this person, and again, really feeling connected to that idea. I think brands have realized the commercial power of this massively. So we've seen it in the cosmetics industry, the L'Oreals of the world have had to sit up and look at all of these kind of creative artists who start off with really meaningful audiences on social media platforms, and suddenly they inform the trends, or they end up building their own brands. And so suddenly the L'Oreal's competitor isn't whatever Estee Lauder or somebody else is doing. It's actually what these 2,000 people are doing in this specific area on social media. In India, I see certain brands even trying to leverage that personal brand piece by telling a story of the people behind the brand. So Paul and Mike Confectionery, for example, is named after two cocoa farmers. So even though Paul and Mike aren't the founders, they're very involved in the branding. So you can really see it there. From a professional point of view, I think that as you evolve in your career, you really end up and I think this is true for any brand that you work on, whether it's your own brand or somebody else's, you end up making a series of decisions. Who am I, but most importantly, who am I not? And I think that really knowing that helps you, you're able to kind of play in certain spaces. The other thing is that you build credibility. So, you build expertise, you build experience, and it's all quite authentic. Like, I can talk about the things that I can talk about because I've been in the room and lived and made the hard decisions around, whether it's marketing or business, and so I can speak to that. But obviously, you need to build your expertise. You need to build your right, I think, to be able to play in a certain area. So even when I went to Google and YouTube, I was distracted from a PhD scholarship that I got in consumer behavior, which gave me a lot of expertise on the way in. In saying that, though, there's things you can actively do to build your expertise. And I think that if you have a brilliant idea and you really understand your audience, and nobody is more expert in your audience than you for your specific product, then you kind of don't need all of the accolades. You can actually just B, believe in what you're doing and be really persuasive about that.
How can a new business owner bring attention to their product or service in 2024?
So in 2024, it's easy to forget, I guess, some of the most fundamental things that work, like putting your product into the hands of customers. Sometimes you can use social media, of course, to do this. You can say, I'm setting this up, I'd like to offer a free service to X amount of people, or a free product to X amount of people. Would you like this? Sign up, follow, whatever it is. Putting your product into the hands of people is amazing for word of mouth, which is still one of the biggest and most effective ways of growing your business, because people serve as real testament to the value of what you have to offer. Likewise, when people do engage with these things, whether you're giving them for free or they're paying a nominal fee or something, ask for something in return, whether it's a review or, sometimes people don't. I'm terrible for filling out reviews on things even that I love, but I will happily just pull up an app and follow somebody or anything like that. And there's real value in that, because if I follow a certain business, then it's most likely to show up on my friend's Explorer page or feed or anything like that. Or else if they discover it themselves, maybe organically, and they'll see, well, Elaine is following it, so maybe I would like it too. So that is one of the ways. Another way that's obviously organic is content marketing, so that when people are searching for you, you're coming up in that. I think one of the things that obviously everybody talks about is, what are the trends? What are the trends on the different platforms? And there's loads of ways to find out the trends. Essentially, Instagram has a hub for it. You can see all of the trending reels and hashtags and all of that. But you also don't want to be so samey. So what's the difference between you doing one thing that somebody else did? It's more important really to know who you are, what your brand is, and then when you know that, add an element of utility, the value that you can give, or entertainment that's really in line with who you are. I think those are some really powerful ways of getting the word out. I think it's super important to really refine your audience and know who you're talking to, and then I think you'll be able to communicate effectively and get the word out on any platform and in any environment.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more. I think 2024 is the time when marketing is expanding, but it's keeping those fundamental values that marketing works on intact. So as we go and push out the brand, whether it is in the form of social media or digital technology, it's still important to know who your customer is and everything about them. As much information as you have about them helps you craft that product or service for them. So Elaine, thank you for bringing attention to that. I wanted to ask you, for someone who's just starting out in business, what are some of the common mistakes that they can avoid when it comes to marketing?
So we touched on this a little bit, which is the idea of, not refining your audience enough. So often I meet entrepreneurs who have an idea and they're like, but of course, everybody would like this, or people like this would like this. And I ask them to go deeper and deeper on that, so they can really be specific about who they are and what the value is that they're offering. And the reason I'm doing that is not to put them through a painful experience, but actually it's because when their content is served to people, the most effective way of growth is that it continues to be served to more people like the people it is served to. So if I'm putting out something that, maybe half of the audience who see it aren't actually relevant, they're never going to buy, they stumbled upon this in whatever way and they're not really giving it their attention. I am unfortunately feeding an algorithm that's taking these kind of mixed messages. Much better to be really clear about who you are, and again, quality over quantity in terms of audience, at least at the beginning. Just make sure that that is what you're focusing on, as much as it would be lovely to grow into a huge audience as quickly as possible, etc. I think getting that right will really pay off for your brand, so that hopefully in a couple of years when you are being acquired, you've really created that acquirable value. The second thing I think that is a real common mistake is testing. So really testing your product, really putting it in the hands of people and listening. So one of the things that you can be, I know, sensitive about is when you're putting a product out into the world, what do people really think about it? I don't want to hear that it's wonderful and beautiful all of the time. I really want to hear, is it delivering value? When do you use it? If it's something that you bought, will you buy it again? Because some people will pay for something the first time, but if they're not really realizing that value, they're not going to buy it a second time. And I need to know what is the value that they're either not getting or that I'm not really providing. And I think that the more you can refine that, the better your pitches become, the better you're able to talk about your product, the better and more authentic your content becomes. And the funny thing about now, 2024, is I think people can really sniff inauthenticity out a mile away, even through a small mobile phone screen. I think you can see it. So the more that you can really understand yourself, your product, and what you're delivering to the world, you know, that is ultimately what is going to be success for you. Other things are, you know, a logo isn't a brand. Having a logo and slapping it on something, that isn't a brand. A brand is the way you walk, the way you talk. Do you actually do what you say you're going to do? Whether that's you as a personal brand, as a person, or whether it's a product that's promising a certain utility or value that it's not really delivering. I think those are some of the most critical areas that you really should get right as you start out.
I absolutely love that. I loved how you talked about, you know, the customer experience, because sometimes as business owners, we can get a little stuck up with, you know, critical customers, but I think they're the best ones, right? Yeah. Because they bring our attention to what we're doing wrong and how we can improve that product or service to make sure that we are better than our competitors. Yes. It's them, you know, teaching us how to do that. So that was absolutely critical. Elaine, what advice do you have for women leaders who have just started out their business or who are looking to scale their business?
So the advice I would have is essentially making sure that they're building their personal brand, because even if they want to be behind the scenes, at the end of the day, your personal brand is kind of the biggest asset that you have when you're just starting out. So making sure that you are putting yourself out there, building your network, and tapping into that is really important. I also think that one of our great strengths as women leaders is our emotional intelligence, our ability to read a room. And that is super important for being able to influence in places where maybe we don't have a natural authority or a formal power. So what I'm talking about there is being able to come in and be able to win, I guess, hearts and minds in order for people to buy in to your idea. I have a bit of a toolkit that I work with for people that I mentor around their building of this idea of influence. So the first thing that I always say is make sure that you have clarity. So you want to be a leader. What is the purpose of your direction, your argument? What do you want people to do? Is it that you want people to buy this? Do you want to change minds? Do you want people to subscribe to an idea maybe at work or as part of a project that you're as part of? So building that kind of clarity of direction is super important. The second piece is around conviction. Are you convinced by your own ideas and your own direction? I always say that, you know, a business case is almost like lipstick, like never leave home without it. So what I mean there is, you know, people can't subscribe to ideas that they don't understand. So can you really articulate with real conviction what it is that you think people should do, whether that's buy your product or whatever else, and why, and what's the value that they can add to that? The other piece is around credibility. Are you the right person to convince people of this specific thing? Often entrepreneurs are exactly the right person to convince people of this thing because this is an idea that's born out of them. The other thing I would say is, and this is really important around emotional intelligence, do you understand the common goal with the people that you're talking to? Do you understand what the mutual benefit is? Because that's really key to being able to land something or do something that creates value for all parties. And finally, and this is maybe the thing that holds it all together, is how comfortable are you? How comfortable are you being clear, you know, demonstrating conviction, asking for what it is that you want, and being able to call out that common goal? I would say though that my advice for leaders starting out a lot of the time is, you know, women are great listeners, sometimes because we've had to be, but we are brilliant listeners. And actually, if there's one thing I know for sure, is that the best listeners are the most powerful influencers, because we hear what people need and we are best positioned to deliver that.
Thank you so much, Elaine. It has been such a lovely conversation with you. I learned a lot, and I'm sure that everybody who's tuned into this has also gained a lot from this. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to learning more with you and staying updated with everything that you're up to.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor. Thank you.